All right, welcome back. Welcome back. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Vernita Glenn-White. I go by Dr. V, and I am a strategic transformational coach where I help high-level individuals and groups of people break their personal glass ceiling so they can become professionally powerful and walk into the movement of embracing brilliance. And the reason why I love that movement is I truly believe that if we embrace our brilliance, which is another way of embracing your zone of genius or walking into your zone of genius, if you actually embrace that, then I truly believe that when all of us do that at the highest level, we can truly change the world. Yes, I truly believe that. It's a thing called synergy, right? And then not only do we embrace brilliance, there are a lot of different things we need to embrace so that we can get to those higher levels. And I wrote a book, Embracing Grits for Greatness, How to Become Professionally Powerful Through Personal Empowerment. Because a lot of times we have a lot of personal glass ceilings that we are unaware of, and we think that they're professional glass ceilings, or we think that it's people holding us back. But a lot of times it's us, you, me, holding ourselves back. And as a strategic transformational coach, I don't just say, hey, what do you want to work on? What goals do you want to have? I'm coming for you, meaning that I'm coming to really help you to get to where you want to be. And that may involve some digging up of the old self, removing some things out of the way so you can get to that level. And just think about it. How many times have you set certain goals in your life and you haven't accomplished them? How many times have you wanted better relationships, better finances? You wanted to learn a new skill. You wanted to change your physical space, or just anything like that, but you just never do it. And some people think it's like not being disciplined enough. Some people think it's a lack of focus, or being lazy or whatever. And I do believe a lot of those play a part of it. But then there are reasons as to why certain things happen. There are reasons as to why we don't move past a certain level. And I don't really want to say that it's because you're lazy, you don't have discipline, you lack focus. Because if you're a high achieving person, especially if you're educated, or you've gotten to a certain level in your career, even started your own business, you had to embrace a level of grit to get you there. And how I define grit in the book is being courageous, having resiliency, being conscientious, having endurance, and choosing being excellent over being perfect. So it took focus, discipline, self-control, all of those things to get to your level. So if we embrace that part of us and apply it to our personal lives, then we are truly embracing brilliance. So in one video, I talked about embracing your brilliant honesty, being honest about what you want. Another video, I talked about embracing brilliant chaos. And today we're going to talk about embracing a new reality, right? Embracing a new reality, a brilliant reality. That's what I want to say, because I like the theme, embracing brilliance. So I have my notes. That's why I keep looking over here to the side so I don't go too much off the cuff. All right, so I am getting over a little cold, so that's where you hear me in my chest. So have you ever heard of people say that they have church hurt? If you, church hurt. Mostly that comes from people of the Christian faith, Christian background, that you hear church hurt. And church hurt is where maybe someone in the church said something to you. Maybe one of the older mothers in the church said your skirt was too short, or maybe the deacons told you they didn't like you playing your music when you rolled up to the church parking lot. Whatever the case may be, a lot of people leave churches based on what someone said to them or what they did not say to them, and then they lump it all together as this is why I don't like Christians anyway, or this is why I don't like that church anyway. And it's amazing how one person can just influence you or give you this view of an entire faith or entire organization or an entire church. So I'm not discounting that, because I do believe church hurt is real. I've experienced my share of church hurt and was like, man, forget the whole church, right? When it's actually people, not the church. It was the people that were in the building of the church that did those things. So so if you know about that, that's kind of an overview. But now I want to switch over to like professional hurt or career hurts, right? And I don't think we often talk about this. And I am on a path to give name or give meaning to just give meaning to something that I've experienced. It is not new. And if you don't know, I am a researcher. I have a PhD. And what that has taught me to do is train me to look at different concepts and create frameworks to solve a problem or to answer a question or solve a problem. So I noticed some things. I didn't realize what this was until I got into higher education, being a doctoral student and then a college professor. But as I look back over certain experiences, and then I look at some of my other friends and their experiences, it doesn't just happen in higher ed. It happens in corporate, K-12 education, higher education, anywhere in the professional or career space. And so I started calling this, and I'm working towards like really honing in on it, is post-traumatic moral injury of scholars. And the reason why I chose scholars, people may automatically think about academia or college professors, but a scholar is anyone who knows something about a particular subject. So I've lumped professional people in there with scholars because you went to school or you were trained to learn a specific area. I hope that makes sense. So it was derived from post-traumatic stress disorder, meaning that something traumatic in your life happened. If you know about veterans, you know about PTSD from the war. Something traumatic happens, and while they don't feel the effects right then, it happens later on in life, hence post, after the event is over. So post-traumatic means something that traumatized you to the point that hit you at your core after the event has happened. And then stress brings on the stress of your body and disorder. But I learned that people don't like the word disorder in PTSD because it's not something that's like a mental illness. And if you are a professional in that space, feel free to elaborate or correct me. So I'm a doctor, but not that kind of doctor. So a disorder means like there's not something wrong. Well, yeah, something wrong or something mental, but they like the term post-traumatic stress injury. It didn't really take off as fast as post-traumatic stress disorder, but injury means that it's fixable and there's nothing wrong with you. So that's what it was. Disorder meant that it was like your fault. An injury means that something happened to you and you're able to heal over that. So let me bring it back. So when I talk about, so that was PTSD. Now let me get to the moral injury part. Moral injury is a whole thing. It's really big in the nursing profession, and then it's slowly coming over to the education profession. Moral injury, especially in the medical side, is when doctors and nurses either have to give treatment against their will or more so deny treatment against their will to patients for whatever the reason is. And they signed up to protect, serve. They have a whole oath that they give. And a lot of them sign up to be in that profession to help people. So when things happen, like, no, this person can't have medicine, no, you must give this person this medication, or whatever the case may be, it does something to their internal core belief, their values, and who they are as a person, stripping away all titles and things like that. When that happens over time, then they start looking at themselves totally different, and their performance levels drop. So that's an overview of post-traumatic stress disorder or post-traumatic stress injury, and then that's an overview of moral injury. I coupled them together after doing some research and called it post-traumatic moral injury of scholars, because a lot of times, and then again, you as a professional, I'm going to put you in that category. And why am I doing that? You went to school, you have a particular set of skills. that you know how to do, and they, for the most part, they align to who you are as a person, your personality, your beliefs, and why you got into that job. Now, I'm not talking about the people, you had to get this job for the sake of getting this job because you had to pay bills. I'm talking about the people who really went to certain career fields because that's what they were led to do. They were drawn to it. Then they got trained to do that work, so this is your career, not just a fly-by-night job. So when you're in your career, you spend all of this time preparing and serving and giving your all, but then there's things like little incidents that start to happen. So we'll talk about education because that's my field. And when I talk about education, traditional education. So I read this article and this lady was talking about teacher burnout. And she was like, honestly, we need to stop saying it's teacher burnout because that makes it seem like it's the teacher's fault. There are things that keep happening to teachers. And when I say teachers, it could be administrators as well. When you keep seeing the injustice of what happens in the school system, when you keep seeing like students who aren't able to get lunch, or students who are denied access and resources, when you have people who are coming in and over you or supervising you that don't really know what they are doing, they don't have the students' best interest, they don't have your best interest. If you're with the leader who don't value you as a person, who doesn't invest in your professional growth or even your personal growth, when that keeps happening over time, then it starts impacting what you truly believe about yourself and what you truly believe about the profession. So I hope that makes sense. Now it's not just, man, I want to go to another job, or man, I can't stand these people. Now it's coming to like, now you're bumping up against everything I believe in. I'll give you a personal example. When I was teaching undergraduate students how to become teachers, I noticed that they didn't have to take any sort of diversity, equity, or inclusion course. These were students who were mostly white female. I had a few Black students, a few students who were Hispanic, but mostly white female. But the students that they were serving were not mostly white students. They were students of color, Black, brown, yellow, but some people may be offended by that. So Black Americans, Hispanics, Asian American students, all just non-white, so students of color. And the fact that they're about to be teaching people who they probably would have never come across. Like for many of them, I was their first educator of color. So they've gone all through school, all through mostly college. I got them junior, senior year, and I am the first educator of color that they have ever encountered directly. So when you're growing up in that environment, you just have a certain lens, and there was no reason for them to explore other identities, ethnicities, backgrounds, or whatever. And I was like, okay, fine, maybe that's how you grew up. But now you're in college where things are open and you get to explore things that weren't in your bubble. That's why a lot of people go to college, to experience new things. So then I would go to the department. I was like, hey, I noticed that a lot of these students I'm looking at their course track and they don't have to take a diversity class. And they were like, no, they don't. And I was like, well, why not? And they're like, oh, well, they can take this multicultural course, but it's an elective, or we don't like the professor that teaches the course, so we steer them away from that, or they'll get that experience when they go into their internship. And I was like, but that's a problem, because one, there's no guarantee that they will get that experience going into their internships, because even if they've gone to a diverse school, the class that they teach could still end up being mostly white students or mostly homogeneous students, like the same, So I was like, that's not going to cut it. So I would try and petition like, hey, we need to change this, that, and the other. And it became such a fight that now I was like, I'm working at this place that they say that they're open. They say they value diversity and inclusion, but they really don't. So that started going against my moral beliefs, my core values, and then that affected my performance, because it was like, why am I even working for a place that don't even value me, right? And I didn't realize that was happening until, after some time had passed, and I realized like, why what am I feeling? Why am I feeling so anxious every time I come up to this job, this, that, and the other? That's not the purpose of this video. But I realized that certain things were happening after the fact, so post-traumatic, and then I realized that I was being triggered by things that were happening on campus and how I was being treated as a Black female at the university. People didn't think I was supposed to be there working there. They thought I was a different type of worker. But all of that triggered my performance and questioning, was I even supposed to be here? Do I need to stay here? All kind of things. So that was post-traumatic moral injury. And the injury part came in, it was like, wait, something has to change. Either I need to change something by not being here, or obviously they weren't going to change. I was hoping that they would change, but obviously they wouldn't. And then you start looking at the impact of what is happening in other areas of your lives, right? So I started being really big, I started paying more attention to things that were happening in diversity, equity, inclusion, looking at different training programs for leaders and things like that. I'm like, wait a minute, we have a problem here. So that impacted my performance. I also noticed that I would be triggered every time I had to write another article about it or had to do some conferences. And I know this may sound like strange because I'm putting two concepts together, but the bottom line is these things happen subconsciously, and then all of a sudden they bubble up. And then you have to go figure out, why am I not producing at the level I want to produce? Why am I getting anxious when I have to talk about this certain topic? Why am I getting a sense of depression when it's time for me to do this presentation, or to work with this patient, or to work with these students, or whatever the case may be? And a lot of it goes back to an event that has happened that you probably haven't addressed. Whew. That was a lot. I hope that landed for you, the way that I'm coming across with it. So a lot of times we think, yes, depression is part of it, being anxious is a part of it, but when it starts impacting your work or your professional life, then that's when it's like, okay, we need to deal with it. Because yeah, maybe someone overlooked you for the job, maybe someone talked about you at work. Those things you can kind of brush off. But when it starts impacting who you are at your core, then it's time for us to create a new reality. And so I wanted to put a name to it, just in case you were wondering, like, what is really going on with me? It could be that you have post-traumatic moral injury of scholars, meaning that something happened and it kept happening subconsciously. You didn't address it and pay attention to it, and now it's impacting your work. And now you're getting triggered when it's time for you to move to another level because you haven't figured out what keeps holding you back. All right, so I said all that to say that was part of professional or career hurt. You know, sometimes we leave jobs or unresolved, we leave our careers, or we change careers totally. And sometimes we need to do that because our assignments are over. But a lot of times, if you keep changing jobs and you keep experiencing the same things, it's probably because you haven't dealt with a traumatic injury. Now, let me be clear. The post-traumatic stress that like veterans have, or rape victims, or people who've been in severe car accidents, I'm not talking about that. I'm not making light of that situation. The reason why I attach scholars to the end is because when intelligence or knowledge or anything like that, being smart, when that's a big part of your identity, and then someone takes that away or questions it or injures it, that can leave a big hole in your space. So I don't want to make light of, well, you weren't in a war. No, I wasn't. And no, you probably weren't either, but it still has like similar effects. I promise it does. And if you want to take some time to learn more about that, I'll make sure I do more videos about that. So I'm not making light of that situation, but it is a real hit to the gut or blow to the gut when you've worked your whole life, or pretty much most of your life, to get to a certain level, and then things keep happening, and then people start questioning you at your core and saying that you don't belong to a certain place, and then you find yourself doubting yourself and not going to the next level. All right. That was totally, I didn't plan on going that deep into this one, but this is all about embracing a brilliant new reality. So the other part of how we deal with this is, again, we can't control other people as much as we want to, as much as I want to. And I want to control other people. Like, if you just do what I say do, we won't have these problems, but that's not how it works. So we have to look at the patterns. Again, we talked about that in another video, but look at the patterns. And this time we're looking at the patterns that happens in our work environment or in our business. Look at the patterns that are things that keep happening, right? So for me, I found myself being anxious when I was doing a lot of talks on women empowerment and diversity, equity, inclusion, but then I would always feel this level of anxiousness and nervousness come up. And that's until I traced it back to what happened at my university, and even back into what happened in my doc program, right? So notice some patterns. If you start feeling, once you start exploring yourself, it all makes sense. So look at the patterns. Then have the willingness to say, okay, I'm not playing the victim. This is what happens. I am willing to move forward. Because a lot of times, like with church hurt, people stay stuck in church hurt, and they use that as an excuse as to why they haven't gone to another church, why they don't fellowship, even so much to why they don't believe in God anymore. But you have to look at the pattern and then be willing to open back up. So be willing to open back up for a new possibility, even if it's leaving the job, but leaving the job with a clean slate, like making sure that it's not your fault, like making sure that you left on a good note, like you're not carrying baggage. That's what I want to say. And the other part is to accept any part that you have, but then also accept maybe the people won't change, and just be open to whatever happens. So again, you can only control you, and just make sure that you're willing to accept how it goes either way. I know some people who are still mad at their jobs, and they've left the whole profession of teaching because of one incident. And it's like, well, did you notice the pattern? You didn't try to fix it. You weren't open to it. You weren't accepting of it. And you weren't even willing to fix the situation and to even come back. Because here's the thing. If you don't address things correctly or create a new reality for yourself, the same issues are going to show up no matter what. So you can go leave a profession and just go work at a call center, a grocery store, the mall, another corporation, and things could still happen, because if things keep happening wherever you are, there you are, right? So yeah. And then the other thing is self-discovery. Again, being a strategic transformational coach, it really involves helping people get down to the nitty-gritty and eliminating excuses, eliminating behaviors that don't serve people well. People don't like to do that because it's easier to blame and change or try to change people on the outside versus working on ourselves, because then we have to admit that we're not as perfect as we think we are, right? So self-discovery is huge in building a new reality. The part about post-traumatic moral injury of scholars is, once I looked at the pattern, once I had the willingness to say, okay, what was my part in it? Or even if I didn't have a part, be willing to just deal with the situation. And then accept the fact that either I need to change something or they won't change, or whatever the case may be. I had to do some self-discovery about what was the exact moment that triggered this for me. And then I realized that I had this freedom, like, I can talk about this topic, or I can look at those people without feeling a certain way, or I no longer have that pinning in my stomach whenever something comes up, right? So I hope that makes sense. In order to embrace a new reality, those are the steps. Embrace a brilliant reality. Those are the steps that are useful. Okay, but yeah, that's what I want to end with. So let's recap. I talked about church hurt and how people blame something that a person did in a building, or a person of a certain faith someone did that something to them, and now they don't like the entire church, or they don't like the entire faith because of what one person did. I'm not dismissing that that's not a real thing, but at what point, if we want to embrace a brilliant new reality, at what point are we going to let it go? Letting it go is easier said than done, of course, but there's a process. There's a strategic process. So that was church hurt, but then talk about professional or career hurt, because the same thing can happen at your workplace, you know. And then I talked about post-traumatic moral injury of scholars or professionals, to where something hits so hard at your core, now it has you questioning everything you thought about yourself in that career, especially if you went into a career because of the core values and beliefs. And then you don't want to, and again, these are small things. That's what I want to really say, especially about transformational work. These are like those small little things that get overlooked, right? These are things that start building that personal glass ceiling so you don't go to your next level. So for example, I held on, and I'm just gonna be honest, something happened as a college professor. Let's stick with the whole diversity, equity, inclusion, and the fact that they didn't believe that the students should have taken a diversity class and this, that, and the other. I was denied getting a grant, and they tried to say all of these other reasons, but when you really question those reasons for, or to validate those reasons, you know, nothing was valid. And it boiled down to, because the way I look, a young Black female going after this prestigious grant, and who had backing to get this prestigious grant. And that left bitter taste in my mouth, because education has always been like this safe haven for me. I was never treated differently because of, based on the color of my skin. If anything, I was treated better being a smart Black girl, right? Always in magnet programs, honors programs, and things like that. And it wasn't until I entered my doc program to where I realized that we don't care how smart you are, because all we see is your skin color. And then that perpetuated all the way into being a college professor. So when that, so, you know, little things started happening, but when that happened about the grant, it sent me spiraling, because I was like, wow, I've avoided everything. I changed patterns. I did all of this. I was willing to look at things different. I was accepting that you all may not like me for whatever. You're going to keep blocking me, whatever. I will find new ways. I even did self-discovery. Vernita, what was your part in all of this? Because the first like 18 months, I was like, or 3 semesters, I was like, I'm just here to be here. I don't even want to be here. But I had to snap it, you know, snap out of it, get, you know, and say, no, you're here now, be excellent at what you do. And I even created a new reality in that sense. But there was still that part of the freedom part. I wasn't free because it just hit so hard at my core. It was part of that post-traumatic moral injury of scholars. That means you didn't care that I was trying to help students, help leaders really understand STEM education, especially at a deeper level, how this can help them outside of just playing with robots, especially in communities where they wouldn't get help at all. You know, they wouldn't get access to this type of work at all. And for you to deny that because of the way I look, that hit hard. So I had to make some decisions to free myself, you know, and I released myself from the tenure track. If you're in higher ed, you know about that. So that was giving up the guarantee to have a job for life. So I had to make some hard decisions, but it was worth it so I could stop being triggered. So again, I hope that's landing for you. These are some fresh topics that I wanted to just start putting out there, because it's time out for looking at surface level stuff. I want to get down to some nitty gritty stuff, especially if you're wondering why you aren't having the life that you deserve, you know, because it's more than just believing and exposing your limiting beliefs and all of that. That's true. But then it's like, we need to start being more strategic about how we are transforming our lives. All right. That's what I want to say. Those are an overview of how to embrace a brilliant new reality. It really is about reframing the story that has happened. So with the situation about the NSF grant, and the denial of that, I did say a lot of times it was because they were afraid they didn't want to give credit to this young Black female, especially in the STEM field who got the opportunity to get the grant without the backing of the university. And then I made it about me. But how I reframed that, so going through the steps of creating the new reality, you know, the interrupting the patterns, or the willingness to look at different things, acceptance and new discovery, and then having the freedom. Now I say that they were only afraid of my ambition. Had nothing to do with me. They were afraid of my ambition. And that's the story I roll with. That is my new reality. And that's what I'm going to embrace from that situation. And when I say it that way, it makes me feel like it wasn't my fault. They were going to do what they were going to do, even when I came at my best self, even when I done. And that's what I was talking about in the other video. Sometimes you do all of what you can do, but you still can't control the outcome of other people. But what you can control is how you see or reframe the story and have a new reality for yourself, right? So I said all of that, coming from church hurt to professional career hurt to post-traumatic moral injury of scholars, all of that to really reframing the stories that have happened to you. Because if you keep living in it, then you're going to just be in that same situation, and it's going to be like, again, remember we talked about that bad chaos, that storm cloud. But if you just reframe of what happened, I mean, it's still your story. The facts are still the facts, but you're just creating a new reality and reframing that story. So I hope that landed for you. I really hope that made sense. Comment down below if you have any questions, comments, or anything that you want to add. If you if you want to share anything, if you thought something was happening but you didn't have a name to it, and I kind of helped you with that, let me know that too. All right, so I am Dr. V. Thank you so much for listening and learning with me. It's a two-way street. And remember this: to be well, be empowered, be bold, and be brilliant. So until next time, bye.